Hello everyone, Steven here. Welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to walk you through how to come up with a simple but yet effective inventory management system by use of Power Apps and Power Automate. So mainly, first of all, we need to understand the tables that we are dealing with. So obviously in this system, it's going to be very simple. We're just going to develop three tables, and the tables being the products table, the suppliers table, and the inventory transactions table. So what will happen is each and every product that we have, we'll have it in the products table, including the categories, of course, and we'll have the inventory transactions. So what the inventory transactions will be doing is when we're having something that is being received, something that is being issued out, or something that is being returned, that is how we're going to manage the inventory levels in the products table. All right. So just to give you an idea of the entity relationships, so we have got a supplier. So one supplier can actually supply many products, and for products against inventory transactions, one product can have multiple inventory transactions. But whatever transactions that are in here, whether it's something that is being issued out, something that is being that has just been recorded in, or something that is being returned, all of those, they have to also reflect in the products table. So without further ado, let's dive into developing this solution. So let's go ahead and create those tables. So what I've done is I've created a solution called inventory management tutorial, because I want all of the assets and tables, application flows that we're going to develop today to be contained into one single solution. So from here, the first thing that we have to do is to create all the tables that are showcased in the schema. So the first table that we're going to create would be the suppliers table. So to create the table, what I'll do is I'll get to new, click on the drop down, go to tables, table advanced, give it the name of supplier. The primary name would be the supplier name. So just give it in here, supplier name. And we don't have to add any other further information or details here. So I'll just click on save. When the table has completed creating, we need to add those extra columns. So I'll go to columns and click new column. The first column, the other column that I need to add is the contact name, which is just a single line text. You can choose to have it required. For this scenario, I'll just put it as not required. So we also need to be able to capture the phone number for our contact person. So this one should be phone number. And we also can just keep an email for our contact person. Email as well. Here, not required. And the last thing that we need to store for our supplier is the address. So because the address might contain multiple lines, I'll just add it as multiple line text. Right, so we have got all of our columns added. So let's go ahead and create a form that will actually contain all this information. So whether we are reading or we are adding a new record, the form is the one that is going to lay out how we go the journey, or it will give us those fields onto the form. So let's just set it up quickly. Let's hide everything else, and we should have the supplier name, the owner. We don't necessarily need the owner, so I can just drag it at the top. We need to have the contact person, their phone number, their email address, and the address. And because the address is multi-line text, in the scenarios where someone has added multiple lines, we need to be able to have flexibility in terms of being able to read all the contents. So to actually handle that, what you can do is just select the address column. This is only available in multi-line text fields. Select the address. Here, just click on use or vertical space. So what will happen is if someone is typing in many lines, the application will be able to show you all of the items that are contained within that particular multi-line text. So save and publish. And after that is done and that is published, our form is done. But there's one thing that we also need to do on our suppliers table, and that is to customize how the view on how this information is laid out. before someone actually edits, they need to be able to get a glimpse of the information. So to handle that, on forms, I'll click on the drop down, click on views, and let's manage the active suppliers view. We don't need the date at which these were created, and I just want to see the custom columns. So select the contact name, contact phone number, contact email, and the address. Save and publish. This suppliers list will be sorted in alphabetical order, so in a descending order. So it will be from A all the way to Z. All right, that's one table done. So we're only remaining with two tables. So the other table that we have to create is the products table. And this products table is the one that will house all the products that we have, including including items that will be utilized within the inventory transactions table. So let's go to tables. On the drop down, click table advanced, products. Make sure it's singular. Name. Here we can have the product name. We don't need to have any advanced properties here. So let's create the columns. I'll go to columns, new column. This column is product description. The description can be multi-line in scenarios where you need to add a lot of information. And we can also have the category. And the category should be the choice. Pertaining to your scenario, what category of items do you keep in your store? If your stock or your stores, you're handling electronics, let's say laptops, pens, let's say computers, t-shirts, everything that you're managing in your inventory, you can add it here. All right, don't just be limited to what I've added here, but you can also add information pertaining to your scenario. So I think that it's okay. I'll click on save. And we also need to add a supplier who's supplying this. So remember, we had created the suppliers table. So now we have to add a lookup column. And this is looking up from the suppliers table. Okay, so let's go ahead and edit the form the same way we've done for the supplier. Go to main form, and I just want to see items that are pertaining to this scenario. And you'll notice to say we do not necessarily have the inventory stock levels, and we don't even have the quantity at hand, but in the ERD, in the schema, I had shown those columns. The reason why we don't have them here is because they'll be relying on the digits or the numbers that are coming from the inventory transactions, which means that we cannot create them until we create the inventory transaction table, and from there they'll be lowering up. It'll be a row up column. So the row up column is the one that will handle the calculations to show us the quantity at hand and the order levels as well. Okay, so from here we can have the category here and the product description also. We can have it there. Save and publish. Now let's do the same for the view. Let's just quickly create the view. Add product created on, we don't need that. We need to have who's the supplier for the product, what is the product category, and a short description. Save and publish. So those are two tables done. So let's create the final table, which is the inventory transactions table. So the inventory transactions table is the one that is handling the quantities, the state at which something is being added to the system, and so on and so forth. So let's create our last table, inventory transaction. And the inventory transaction, I can just have it a transaction number. Transaction number, this one shouldn't be mandatory because we are going to add it as an auto increment field, so we don't need to have it as required because the system will be managing how to iterate those numbers. And now let's have it saved. So the first thing that the first column that we need to add is the inventory transactions. So the inventory transactions for this scenario, what I'm going to use two types. It can either be stock in or stock out. What should happen is when stock is being taken out, it should be deducting from the levels, the quantity levels in the products table. But if stock is being taken out, is being brought in, it should be adding to the quantity levels. So from here, let's go to the form for the inventory transaction table and let's edit the main form. I don't want to see all these other columns. So the first column that we need to add is the transaction type. This one should be not a formula, should be a choice. And right, transaction type should be a choice, and it can either be stock in or stock out. Right, let's save this. And remember, I had mentioned that the transaction number is something that will have to be auto populated, so we can just have it as an auto number, and the transactions will be carrying the prefix of 1000, 1001 up and all the way up until 99999. So let's save this. And we don't need to have this on these two columns on the form because these are columns that the system will automatically manage. So we can just bring them at the top of the form like so. So in our form here, we can have the transaction type. We can have the quantity. The quantity will be a whole number. And then we can have the transaction date, which should just be the date. And we can also have description. Description, you can have it as multi-line text, or you can just have it as single line text if you're not expecting to have a lot of information on that field. But what we've created here is just a table that is standing on its own. How can we now reference the table, the products table? Because remember, the relationship that we have for products against inventory is that one product can have multiple inventory transactions. So we need to add that relationship in here. So here I can just say product, and this product table is a lookup table, and it's looking up from the products table. This table, save. And then just bring it on the form, save and publish. Okay, let's go back. Let's quickly edit the view. Let's edit the view for our inventory transactions. I don't need to have the created on. We can just have the product. We can have the quantity, the transaction type, the transaction date, and we can also have the description. As you can see, I've added the transaction date, but if you don't want to add a custom column pertaining to the transaction date, you can just rename the created on column to give it a name of transaction date, because automatically the system will be tagging that. So if you want to minimize the amount of data that is being inputted by a user, it's better just to utilize the columns that are already in there, because if you use created on, the system will automatically tag, and it will also give you the date and time at which this transaction was recorded. But in this scenario, the person who's inputting the information, they have to also specify the transaction date. So that's just the difference between these two items. So what I wanted to do as well is to just quickly activate the quick create form, because what the quick create form will do is that it will it will simplify the journey, because if I want to enter multiple transactions pertaining to one product, I don't have to be navigating through each and every different screens, different navigation screens. That's just to perform that transaction. So what I'll do now is I'll create a quick create form. I'll just give it a name, quick create transaction. I don't want to use any AI generated suggestions because I already have everything we need in terms of our columns. So from here, we need the product, we need the quantity, transaction date, transaction type, and the description, and we can hide all these as well. So let's hide the section, and let's hide this section as well, and give it a name. Transaction details. All right, so that's all of our tables. They've been done. We have completed all the tables, but one thing that we haven't completed, we haven't added with, is on the products table. We need to add the quantity at hand column. And what this column will do is that it will be looking up from all the transactions that are in from the inventory transactions. So because we have got two types of transactions, we have got the stock in or stock out. In the products table, we'll create two, I think there should be three columns. One column should be calculating all all the stock that was inputted into our stores. So this is all time. So if the system, we started to use it last year, or maybe this year in January, so it will be calculating all the transactions pertaining to that product for the whole year. And then we'll also have another column. This column will be all the stock that has been taken out from the system. And this column will also be a row up that will just be calculating everything that is stock out. And the reason why we need to have a third calculated column is because this column now is the one that is going to give us the total quantity at hand. And then from the quantity at hand, that is where we can spice it up to say, if the quantity maybe reaches 50 for all products, maybe send a notification to someone via Power Automate. So first of all, let's go back to our products table. We'll just go directly to the form, the main form. And let's add a column. This one should be all time quantity. All time inventory in. I mean, you can come up with better naming conventions, but for this scenario, let me just use that. So it should be a whole number, and the format should be none. And this one should be a row up column. Right? So save and edit. Right, so when we save our row up column, it will open up a new window. And from this window, we have to specify, because now we want to calculate all the records that are in the transactions table and whose transaction type is equal to in. So first of all, we'll select the table that related to, which is the transactions table. And from here, I'll add a filter to say, just give me everything that of transaction type equals in. All right. And the aggregation should be, we're summing up all the quantities. That's the reason why we added the quantity field. We added it as a whole number. This can only be done for columns that are sharing the same data type. So if you have got a currency column in your child table, make sure you also have a currency column in the which you're rolling up. That way it's going to work. So we just have to do the same for inventory out. So I'll save and close this. All right, so that's our all-time inventory in. So now we can also add a column called all-time inventory out. This one should also be a whole number, and the behavior should be all that of the row up as well. So save and edit. We just have to do the same. So we're selecting the related table. After we've selected the related table, we are also selecting, after we selected the edit table, we're also selecting after selecting the related table, we are also selecting the transactions table, filtering it by if the transaction type equals stock out, and let's just aggregate all the quantities. All right, save and close. And let's go back to our previous window. So from here, what I'll do is, let me just add a new component. This will be a 3-columned section. Just add it as 3. What I'll do now is I'll add the inventory stock in, and then I'll also add the inventory stock out. All right. So now for us to check the current stock level, I'll just add a calculated column. And this one should also be this one should be a formula. You can use calculated column or formula will do. So I'll say all-time inventory in. I want it to subtract by all-time inventory out. That's it. The formula will detect. So from here, we don't need it to be a decimal. These are all numbers. You can get specify from here. But if decimals are working in your scenario, you can also have them as decimals. Save. Drag the stock levels here. All right, save and publish. In terms of the data schema, the tables, the relationships, the calculations, and everything else, that's it, we're done. The only thing that is remaining now is to now come up with an application. So the simplest application that you can ever develop, I always urge the people who are starting out, to use the model-driven applications, because the model-driven applications are data-centric applications, but you can also have flexibility in terms of the functionality that you can have also in there. So let's go back to our solution. And in our solution, currently we want to have 3 items, which are the tables, which are these 3 tables. So now I want us to add a new model-driven app. And the name should just be inventory inventory app. Let's create this. On our navigation, let's click on new Dataverse tables. And these tables, remember we had supplier. I think we had supplier. We had transactions. And we also had products. Let's add those. So we have got our suppliers, products, and transactions. So I'll just rename this group to say inventory manager. Okay. Save, publish, and then let's give it a test drive. Okay, let's play the app. So the first thing that we need to do is let's just create a dummy supplier. Okay. So just have to create one supplier. So let's record a product. This product is supplied by this supplier. The product name is Lenovo laptop, G14 laptop. Category is laptops. Product description, then we can just copy this and use that as well. Right, save. So now we need to create the transactions. But what the other thing that you might also want to add is to have a way of seeing all the transactions that are related to this particular table. Because as you can see here, for us to add a transaction, we need to go on the navigation, then click on inventory transaction, and then add the inventory, and then come back here. It will be a tedious task. So what we can do, we can quickly just go through to the table. I'll select the products form, edit it. And from the form editor, what I'll do now is select the whole screen, the whole section of the window, and I will just have it as a 2 columns so that we have got the information pertaining to the product here, and then we have got all the transactions here. So the transactions are managed in another table, but we can always refer to them here via a subgrid. So select the section, even transactions, let's have them there. Just give it a name of transactions. And the subgrid as well, let's just give it a name of transactions. And I'll hide the label here. And from here, we can show up until 10 items, or we can use the available space. That is done. Save and publish. And let's go back to the previous window, hard refresh. And there we are. We have got all the information here, including the stock levels. If I'm to calculate here, you see that it will just be 0, including the stock level will be 0, because we haven't added any transaction. So let's quickly add a new stock transaction. The product, it has already associated itself with the product that we've added here. So let's say we've ordered 10. The transaction date was on the 18th, and this is stock in. Just as an example, and then I'll save and close. So now for our Lenovo ThinkPad, if we do calculate on the inventory all time in, you see that now the levels are 10. Because the inventory out is 0, the stock levels is still 10 from the calculation that we added, because here we're just subtracting, we're taking this in, subtract by out, that is the total stock level. So Steve has come, Steve is joining our company, so we need to assign him a laptop. So from here we can just say, okay, quantity is 1, transaction date is on the 21st, this is stock out, assignment to new employee. All right, save and close. So we've just taken out 1 from our inventory. If I'm to calculate on the inventory out, you see that there's 1, save. Now the stock levels is 9. So all of the transactions that you have, we've ordered 2 new laptops, 2 new ThinkPads on the 20th. This is in. And then we're going back to the previous window. The all-time inventory in will still say 12 because it's just calculating everything that came in. But when we calculate on the stock out, it will be out. It will be the same 1 because we only have 1 out transaction. And the total stock will still do its magic. It will take the inventory all in, it will subtract it by inventory out to give us the stock level. So I know I simplified to say it's going to be a quick one, but yeah, I've stretched it out because I wanted to make sure that we've covered all the grounds in terms of how the tables are interfacing with each other, how we can add that information into an application, and how can we also add extra functionality. The same way we've handled with the subgrids, quick create forms, and so on and so forth. So thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.